Hello and welcome back to our lovely podcast. This is Andreas, and with me is my good old friend
Daniel.
Daniel, right? So, and today with us is a special guest, so we start to invite other people. This is Fabian. Hello, Fabian.
Hello. Thanks for having me today.
So formal.
I'm a professional.
Yeah, so we brought him in for a reason. So we thought let's make today's topic about difference in the work environments of German companies, American companies. So what's different in day-to-day work? What's different maybe with the hierarchy, bosses, stuff, all of this. Also a little bit of disclaimer, of course. So this is just from our experience. So we're all coming out of the IT area. So we are not comparing co-workers and stuff like that. So there might be huge differences in that. And also, of course, we didn't work in every company in the world. So it's just the experience we have. So totally scientifically approved, as always.
Well, I gotta be super careful with what I say because I think both of our listeners, I'm still colleagues with them. So
I mean, Andy and I are not, so it sounds like a you problem, Daniel.
it might be a me problem. Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe it would be nice to make a little bit of disclaimer, like how we are related in that topic. So Fabian and me, we both worked for Daniel for quite some time. Fabian,
long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago, and Fabian worked with me and is now also switched to an American company, while I have switched to another German company. So
Actually, didn't Fabian also used to work for you as well, Andy?
not really.
I think officially I did. Like, I think I was in your team, wasn't I? I think at least in marketing I was your
Oh yeah,
underling.
actually, you're right. Yeah, you were in my team.
Is underling a English word?
Slave.
Slave. Yeah, okay. Yeah, and I definitely was a slave in marketing, but yeah, that was a different topic. Like, that was a crazy time. No, but
What a small world.
I was technically no, Andy was technically my boss for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you were as well, technically my boss.
I don't think I was ever your boss.
Technically, on paper.
I don't think I was ever your boss.
You were.
I think I was the boss of your boss of your boss.
That's
of your
the
boss.
Same, that's the same thing.
Of your boss.
No.
Of your boss.
No. Is there not this many people at Flowfax?
What? You can't say that.
I mean,
all right, Andy, you're gonna have to beep that out later.
Oh, we're not mentioning names. Oh.
No.
I don't know.
No, actually, there are some podcasts that we've done that we've like. We definitely yeah. There are some podcasts. I guess it doesn't matter because, like I said, our two listeners. Basically, I still work with them, right?
And I mean, even if like is it like is that such a big issue?
Well, theoretically, I have to get everything approved, sign a BOMF or something, get it.
But why? Like
through corporate communications and
But
all that.
I mean, you didn't talk about this company, I did, so.
But that's
I will never sign something with you guys again.
let's directly start with that topic because I really love that, and we will talk about name dropping at the end, so we can do some. I don't even know if I have the skills to beep it out, so maybe we. But
just record over and go beep. Just merge the tracks.
Yeah, but professional way.
Yeah, you started to say some interesting things because you dived right into German corporate issues. Like you had to fill out the BANF and fill out this and fill out that. So obviously, Germans, we have, well, everybody says we love our documents, and maybe Daniel, you can say something about that. Is that true from an outside perspective, coming into German corporate culture? Is this?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
use more words to describe it a little bit. So
I
this
think
is a
there's no need to
podcast
describe
and
it more.
I mean, it's like it's unambiguous, right? It's like you asked me, it's like, does 1 + 1 actually equal 2? It's like, yeah, it does. It's like, yes, there's a lot more paper involved here in Germany.
any
There's a lot more
special
paper.
area where that is, or is it like overall completely?
Look, I'll give you an
everything?
example, right? Just in like how things would be done differently, right? So, okay, we have to like sign our names to make sure that we're, 3G compatible, right? So first of all, I don't think in the US they would even do that, right? But if they did do that, I think they would tend towards like online solutions, like, hey, we made a Google Doc, everyone sign in over here, or we put together a form using Typeform or something, right? Or if the firm is like really old school, it's like, hey, we put together a Microsoft Access database. Here's an actual piece of paper. So yeah, Germans like paper or using paper.
Do you also have to I remember just like from my experience, I remember when we had to when we wanted to get our money back when we traveled. There's a word for that, but I don't remember that word. We had to cut out things and had to glue it on paper.
No, that part is
that is
part is
gone?
improved.
Nice. So
I
something.
think. I don't know actually, since I never did it.
Yeah, I mean, I also just stopped doing it because the work I had to put into to get like $20 or so back was more work than $20 worth.
But it's generally true that paper is trusted more than, let's say, online stuff, and you see it in the industry as well, right? There's a lot less DocuSigns being sent around, right? So whenever I still do like transactions or deal with companies in the US, right? So, they just send me DocuSigns everywhere, right? Here it's barely used and stuff. So
Yeah, I guess that's something that has to do with Germany's overall state of digitalization. So it's also, I think, a lot of legal issues. I think
you actually can do it.
Yeah, you can do it, but it's not for everything.
I think the preference is not to do it though. Like I think at
Yeah.
least with some of the people I've talked to, they know that they could do it digitally, but they kind of don't want to because they want to feel that paper in their hands and say, get that signature on paper.
Do you think they really think so, or they just like use it as an excuse to not learn how to do certain things and invest money potentially to set up a solution for that?
I don't know. DocuSign's pretty easy to use.
It is, but in Germany you have to consider some more things. Like I have some contracts with DocuSigns now with my American employer now, and I definitely had to do one paper sign. Like I had to sign one document on paper, which basically says I'm okay with using a digital signature for every future contracts. And after I did that, now we can use DocuSign, and I think it's still something like that. Like there will be some limitations legally that you can't sign digital without having any paper.
Yeah, I looked into that because we wanted to introduce the DocuSign stuff to our customers at the time, and it was actually nice to see how many things are possible, even under German law. That changed also a lot. Are possible now. There are still some that are not allowed, especially if it goes into like stuff that you need a notary for and such things that have to be done on paper. But for example, in comparison, in my company now, I have a DocuSign account. So and we use DocuSign, but also honestly, I used it one time for some contract change stuff thingy. But I'm also allowed to do it on my behalf, so I can send it out to other people and say like with DocuSign, and they can sign back with DocuSign then and stuff like that. So I think that has a lot to do with corporate culture. It's like how do you embrace these, and especially the documents. It's true. It's in Germans. We really love to have them in our file system. Have these papers somewhere.
I mean, it's hard for me to say this, but if there is a good thing about Corona, right, is that it's catalyzing the industry to make these changes, right, and catalyzing the government, right? So even in something as, let's say, old school as like real estate, right? How do you call this? Like the Wohneigentumers
Wohngenossenschaft?
or something like that, basically condominium agreements, right? Germany passed a law in December of 2020 that basically allowed those board meetings of these condominium boards to operate digitally, right? So I think the laws are changing in response to Corona.
What
I
you
don't
mean
think
is
anyone
die
will use that, but
Eigentümerversammlung.
I don't know. I always call it the VEG. VEG.
Ja, der VEG ist der Wohneigentümerversammlung, Genossenschaft, und dann ist das die Versammlung hier. So, yeah, it is possible,
Yeah.
and we have a problem general, but we spoke about that in a previous podcast. So digitalization grade in Germany isn't that high.
You think it's going to change with the elections?
No, we're getting political?
We have to immediately get off script.
I was much more open to that. I had a very much drive in that area to bring that digitalization to a lot of people, but it's I think it's not necessarily a governmental issue. It is very much like a people issue. And then if you see here how many people are, how much they struggle with doing things digital. I was in the Netherlands just some days ago again to go into a zoo, and basically everything was digital. So
Yeah.
And
I think this is definitely a cultural preference.
yeah, and
Right.
I think that will take another. So I guess the generation of Fabian, maybe they are really into that stuff. They are completely, they use apps for a lot of things. So I think that will change, but not as fast as we might want to see it.
Whenever it's possible, I would say my generation, we always choose the digital way. And I'm already old comparing myself to people that are 18 years old or so. They really live with that. Like, they can't live without it. So
they'll never sign up BAMF. They'll just TikTok themselves.
I mean, not to be rude, but I think some of them might not even know how to write with a pen. So
yeah. I have an awesome example for that, because what really frustrated me in the past, but then we will go back to workplace, but we have these Corona app where you can scan your vaccinations and stuff like that, so you can basically prove with a QR code that you have received all necessary vaccinations, and then you can go into bars, restaurants and stuff like that. And the idea behind that, this is government issued, and they made an app for that. And the idea is there are two different apps. One app is for the consumer, so you scan these vaccination papers. That worked quite well from my side. And then you have this QR code on your phone. You just show that to them. For example, the bar, the restaurant, they download another app with which they can scan these QR code, and it would just say like, yes, this is valid. They will check it very quickly and say, yes, this is green. He got all necessary shots. Everything is fine. Times are correct. And then he also shows you the name of the person that this certificate is valued for. And then the only thing they need to do is basically check your ID card to see, yeah, it's you, it's valid, great, awesome. Nobody in Germany uses this check app. That's so strange. You can go into a restaurant and they will always want to see this, and then you always have to scroll down, because in the bottom there are two entries for the two vaccination shots that you got, the first one, the second one, and they will always want to see both of them, and then they want to go into and look, okay, when was the last one? 2 weeks.
But that's really fancy already. Like, I've been to quite a lot of places since I downloaded that app, and most of them just wanted to see a QR code. Like, they didn't even see who it was for or when I got my vaccination. One lady asked me once if I'm fully vaccinated, because I just have one vaccination. I got Johnson & Johnson. And like, she was the only one questioning if one is enough. all of the others didn't even see that because they just saw, oh, he has a QR code. He must be good.
Yeah,
I'm not even asked anymore.
Yes, true. We went to lunch today and we weren't asked. We just walked in there.
That's okay. That's now the we don't want to we want to ignore that now. But it was very strange. So there is a governmental issued app to check that, which would make it very quick. Just scan. Yes, great. Nobody used it. Nobody used it. Yeah, I also tried because I asked the guy yesterday. Was 2 days ago. We went into a restaurant and he also didn't do it. He wanted to scroll again. It's like, hey guys, isn't there an app that should check the QR code? Isn't that the reason? Because I thought like, did they? I'm coming from the software developing part. I said like, okay, maybe they did a shitty job on the UI because you always have to scroll down and the QR code is so big in the beginning. It's like, it looks like they meant to do something different at that point. And then I checked it myself because you can download those check app. Everybody can download it. It's in the App Store. It's in the Android store. You can just download it and you can. So that shows, I think, the approach of Germans to this digital technology very well. It's just like, it is free, it is issued.
I bet it also is in different countries like that. Like, that's just laziness, and people don't really care about it because it's not really involved in affecting them. Like, they just, okay, I checked it and you're good, even if they didn't really check.
Yeah, I mean, no one checks my ID about anything here in Germany.
Oh, I got checked a lot of times, but like I said, for this times where I got checked, it would have been even faster if they just used the scan option.
Yeah.
It would be green, fine. And not scrolling down, looking at that, adding 2 weeks on the last date, and then seeing if it works, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff. It would have been much faster, and they just don't use it. Never saw that.
Maybe it's because they don't know the concept of a QR code, and they imagine, like, after hearing, oh, you can download the scanner apps, that they have to do some fancy things or so.
Yeah, but that might be all true, but that shows exactly where we are standing.
Yeah.
People don't know the concept of a QR code, and even for a thing that, like the COVID-19 issue, where information have been bombarded to everybody, like also how this app works, it is out there. It's very easy to find. It's not something that you have to work yourself in like DocuSign and find out. Okay, which signing is legal, might be. So it's a very easy process. You can you read an FAQ with 3 entries and you know what to do with all the links. And no.
I mean, you don't even need to read a FAQ. Like, if you download the app, I think there's just one button that is scan, and you press it and you scan and you're good.
Yeah,
like,
but just
dude, no one even checks my ID when I fly, right?
Do they have to check?
Not in Germany.
Yeah, and also I think if you go inside of the EU, they don't check.
I find that just bizarre.
Nah, we trust each other here.
I could just give my tickets to somebody else and they could just fly as me.
Yeah.
And that would be horrible. Why?
I don't know. It's just no one checks any IDs. Like, the last time I got asked for like my vaccine pass, I just showed them the yellow book. They didn't even look inside of it. You know, they didn't even read my name. There was like, oh, there's some folded yellow piece of paper.
But maybe you also go to some strange locations. Like, just might be an option. Like, might be true. Not sure if it is, but.
But let's draw the attention back to the workplace stuff, and especially one issue I wanted to talk about is leading culture or bosses. For some strange reason, I want to do that.
This is Andy's opportunity to complain about me.
He doesn't need an opportunity. Like, he always complains about you. So
yeah, but this is recorded and on the internet. So
no, I found it very interesting because I worked a lot of years in a very German company. I wouldn't say it's a typical German company in that way. It was also very start-up-ish, let's say it that way. Very close connection to the owners and CEO and CTO. Daniel came over, took over the job as CTO, and a lot of things changed also in terms of especially communication and how to work. And before that, I only knew American work by news articles, internet, and all the stereotypes you hear. And it was funny to see some of these stereotypes actually be proven totally right.
Yeah, what were those stereotypes that
The typical one
true?
that I always heard before and that I could absolutely agree on is that Americans don't work. And let me elaborate on that a little bit further, because it's not true that they don't work. They work, of course, but like the way in Germany, it's very typical. Like you have, for example, you have your workday starts at 9 and it closes at 5. Let's do the typical workday or stuff like that in these areas. And then you come to your workplace at 9 and you work very concentrated until 5 o'clock. Then you go home and then you forget everything about work and then it's private time. But in that 9 to 5 area, you are very productive. You are working. You try to avoid any disturbance. You just do your job. And when you came wrong, it's this typical stereotype about Americans is they just basically just talking all the day. Like, oh, let's talk about this, let's talk about that, let's socialize, let's do brainstorming about that. And then you go out of the day, and when we started that, I came out of the day, it's like, what did you actually do today? It's like, not that much. And then I got emails from Daniel at 3 o'clock in the evening, and when he sent me over so basically, he is talking a lot in the day, when everybody is there. He uses that time to socialize. Then he goes home, says hello to his wife and kids, and starts to work on the stuff that a German would work on at 9 o'clock. So that's something that I heard before, and to some degrees that's proven true.
I mean, what was my job? It's not like I was a bricklayer or, I had to like make widgets or anything, right? Most of my job does involve talking, and listening. I don't know.
No, I found that maybe that's also changing in I think these work environments are also coming closer together, as we all like especially in the tech industry. Like, we are not talking about steel or coal or car manufacturing or whatever. I think that's quite local, but you have the same talents, you hire same talents. These companies are normally at some degree working worldwide, or at least in many countries. So these whole thing that these agile processes came to this area, they streamlined the processes a little bit around the world, I would say. And for example, in typical German companies in the earlier days, this many talking stuff wasn't that normal. So you have a very clear hierarchy. You have people talking to each other, but in Germany we tend to do a lot of talking to making a plan, and when this plan is ready, then we do a lot of production. And these people that do the planning and do the production are normally, or in the past, were two separate groups. So the real production crew could just focus and concentrate. They get then their targets and they work on that. And really high production, really efficient working on that. That, of course, has other problems, but it made it very clear to work on that. And now we have this influence that much more of your daily work switches from doing actually productive things into talking about stuff and doing the planning, doing reviews on stuff and stuff like that. But maybe Fabian could say something about that. He experienced that now as well from an American perspective.
Yeah, but I think you're pretty wide with like this what Germans think about it, because I always loved the situation when Daniel started at the company, and people were just like always thinking, and they were thinking and also saying that, like, what is that lazy dude actually doing, just laying around on the sofa and playing with his phone? Because that's what it looked like he was doing. People didn't really guess, and I also didn't understood what he was actually doing, because I'm German. I started in a German company. I learned what Andy just described, that this is the right approach of things. And I was a little bit envious of his approach, because I liked that. I liked, like, not working, just chilling around and playing on my phone. Until I figured out that he's not just doing that, but more than it seems to be. But I think that's a way better approach. And I was surprised that he always said, like, yeah, this is normal in the US. Like, you guys in Germany, just you need to learn this. And yeah, I never.
I don't think I
trusted
ever said
him.
that.
You said that. Like you said, this is like the American style of doing things. I heard you say that a lot.
Maybe
But
I was just justifying my coffee break.
maybe. Or maybe the break where you were just chilling downstairs and having a cigarette or something. But I don't know, and I don't care because I think it is the right approach of doing things. Because now, as
Can we get clear on what this approach is?
Yeah,
because the approach is definitely not, just hang out and
Daniel, chill. I was just going to explain what I mean by that, because now working for a US company, I really feel that mindset of saying, okay, we all are working together and to finish something and to do something, and we should just assume that everybody is doing the right thing towards that goal. And it all depends on in kind of what a phase you are, because as Andy said, there are like these phases, and traditionally German, there are really long phases of production, and you do the planning beforehand. But I just learned, especially now working for a startup, there is always planning going on. There's always talking going on. There's always the need to figure something out. Maybe you need to learn about a new technology. Maybe you need to figure out a good pricing model for your product. Maybe you need to figure out what your new product is. A lot of things that you need to think about, that you need to talk with people about. And that's just what people in Germany also like to do in behind closed doors. Like, you normally don't see them always discussing and doing things. And they like to discuss a lot, and they like to, having big meetings about things, but sometimes you just need some time to think about certain things. And I don't mind doing that, like in a room, chilling on a sofa. I remember Daniel and me, we walked around a lot. We had long lunch breaks where we went to Düsseldorf and had sushi and were like 4 hours gone. But we were really productive on these on these lunch breaks, because we talked a lot about what we want to achieve. And I think this is so much more productive comparing it to a traditional German approach, where you just have just structured, I have a 1 hour appointment now, and we have to do this now. And after we finish this appointment, we have to go to production and build it for a 1 week sprint. And a 1 week sprint is already pretty modern for German standards. But you get what I mean, I think. Like, it is perceived as not work, even if there's a lot of work behind that. And also this 24/7 working mindset that Daniel has, not a good mindset, but pretty common, especially in the tech industry.
Let me ask you a question. So it was surprising to see me walking around and talking to people. And you said it didn't line up with your expectations of what you thought I should or would do. What were your expectations there?
So
signing BAMFs.
Yeah, no, not seeing you at all. I think that would be my expectation of a I don't know, what did you start at, CTO? Like a Geschäftsführer. I would not, like, normally in Germany, you don't have a lot of contact with your Geschäftsführer, with your company leads. Like, they do things, they talk to people, sure, but you don't see that, and you wouldn't question what they do, because that's how it is. Like, they do their job. But you were like with us in the office building, you were on our floor, you were just doing things, and this was so not typical for.
Is that still true?
Like, I don't know. I haven't worked for a German company afterwards, but when I talk to friends, it is pretty similar to that. Yeah.
What about where you work, Andy? Is there? No, I mean, you work directly for the CEO, so you should probably talk to him all the time.
Yeah, I talk more, and also that is I don't know if that is, you cannot compare that completely, because I think Fabian and me both are in a startup atmosphere again. But even there, I think it's a big difference if you're an American startup or a German startup. But so we have very flat hierarchies right now. We basically have the C-level, and the rest are all employees. So you necessarily have direct contact. But the normal thing you would see in a German company, if it grows in that area, team leads will get into that very fast, regional leads and stuff like that. And normally the planning level happens on that, or the planning happens on that level, let's say it that way. Like, to the C level with the team leads, with specialists maybe from the group would do future planning. They will work out some ideas, and like the normal, let's say the normal employee the last man in the line who's doing code or doing marketing or whatever, or sales, he would get informations then. So there would be a single point where the whole group would stand in front of them and say like, okay, we figured out what we do next year. These are our plans. These are the 5 products that we want to do. Maybe it's not completely in the details specified. So the details still have to be worked out, of course, but it would be like, okay, we will build this product. It should do this. We want to attract this kind of market with that. Marketing, figure out how to attract these people, where to find them. The POs, the developer should figure out how to achieve the feature goals and stuff like that. But the overall plan and the 5-year plan and stuff like that, that would be done on that area and will put down to the people. And I think it was quite different. And you saw the irritation in a lot of persons when you approaching everybody directly. So I think in the beginning it was okay in terms of like, okay, he wants to know what's going on here, but also later on, like, I just talked to that random developer about that idea that I had. Can we make that happen? And you saw like, because they approach you with this feeling of like, okay, he gave me an order to do that now, and it's like, no, we just basically talked about, is this possible? How should we proceed with that? And this is something that a German employee it's very hard to get its grip on this, because they think like, okay, he's coming to me, he's giving me an order to do something. Like, no, we're just planning, we're just doing this. And this is very confusing for Germans, I think.
How would they normally get information then?
From top to bottom. Like, as Andy said, like, they will just have, like, I can tell you how it was for me before you joined the company. Like, we just had weekly, I think every second week we had a meeting on Mondays, which was our sprint planning. And that's where we as developers got our breakdown of tasks that we have to do. And we were not involved in any roadmap appointments. We were not involved in any planning on how the product should look, feel, whatever. Like, we were, and I hate to say it, we were code monkeys. We were just translating requirements to code to build a product out of it. And we were production, like, we were building things. We were Handwerker. Like, we were not thinking about the future roadmap of the whole company, which makes sense because not everybody in the company can be always involved into that. But this is why it was so confusing to get these exposures to like planning and to not directions was the right word, like getting tasks by someone who is my boss. Like, when I talked to someone who is my boss back in the days, I took it as I have to do this now, as Andy said. But this was not normal, because normally my boss, like my boss, would never talk to me about a task, except there might be a project where we were working on together because there was a friend involved or so of my boss. But normally there was like 2 or 3 layers between the whole vision of the company down to I produce some code now. And you disrupted that completely.
Well, I mean, to be fair, we're also generalizing a lot, right? So I happen to come from, let's say, a school of thought that values emergent structures and flatter formal hierarchies, right? There's certainly companies in the US that have a very rigid top-down hierarchy, right?
Yeah, that's
and I'm sure in Germany the same. There are companies that have very flat structures, like, for example, the one that you're working at.
Yeah, that's why I put it up in front. It's, of course, it's a very narrow view on that. It's like, here we are not sitting here as expert in the field and having everybody worked for 500 companies, researched everything and stuff like that. It will not. So I'm totally sure that you will find American companies who work exactly the same way. Because I also think that it's not, maybe sometimes it's not necessarily a difference in Germany versus the US, and it's maybe more a traditional way of working versus an IT approach, agile approach of working in the future. But what I believe is maybe because of, I don't know, the nature of Americans, or maybe that because they are much more years into that transition, it is more common in the US to find such a way of working, and the Germans still tend to yeah, I don't make that joke here now. It's no, but they're looking in for some leadership in terms of management. They want somebody to tell them what to do, and also
I will tell you.
yeah.
I will tell you one thing that still irritates me about working in Germany is basically all hands or campfire discussions or, you know, Q&A sessions, right? It's like talking to a brick wall sometimes, right? It's you have the opportunity to like discuss issues in an open forum, right? Is anyone confused about our strategy, or does anyone have any comments or questions? And it's just crickets. It's just silence, right? That is maybe related to what you were talking about, Fabian.
I think it is. Yeah.
Also, I have to step in here as representative of the unions in Germany. So, because I'm a little bit split into that, because in some ways I searched my jobs for exactly this kind of work. I like that kind of work, being engaged, yeah, also playing around with ideas, the whole planning stuff, and then also do something, so hands-on. So I like that very much, but also from a employee perspective and a union perspective, I see a lot of problems in that, because I know the work hours of those people. So, because it is that, like what I made fun of in the beginning, this is a little bit the truth. So you do a lot of talking in the day, but then you still have to do some, let's call it, what do you like to call that, work? So in terms of, for Fabian, maybe meaning to write some lines of code. For me, in the back times, it meant writing some PO criteria, some stories in Jira, making a presentation about the new feature that we want to develop, so to communicate it into the company. And sometimes you don't have the time for that during the day because you're talking so much. Then you put all this work in the evening or something where nobody can disturb you, basically, where you have this time for that. And that's I'm not sure if that is a American or German thing. I think that's related to that transition in the workplace, to this. That's also how today will. What is a recruiter searching for? The most common phrase I hear, I don't know how to translate that to English. It's more like everybody wants somebody who's thinking business wise. Like in German would say, like unternehmerisches Denken. That's the most important phrase you have in these recruiting books right now. And then sometimes I'm staying there like, I understand what you're searching, but on the other hand, I'm an employee, so I'm not self-employed. Don't have my own company. If I would like to have that business thinking approach, I might create my own company. I choose not to. I choose to be an employee. So I don't want to deliver that. And that's a little bit like from my communism standpoint, I think what is it, like Rick and Morty said it, right? That's on some points it's slavery with some extra steps. So you pushing some people into basically slaves, but not by the pressure of leadership, but basically putting it into themselves. So it's your own pressure that's also showing in the numbers of like burnouts and stuff like that, which is going up really rapidly in terms of that, because everybody is doing so much work. So I like this kind of work, but you also have to be, I think, a very strong character to know where to stop. And that's not so easy. In the old days, you could just say like, no, boss, it's 5 o'clock, I'm done, I'm going home, I go to wife and children. This is a little bit harder right now.
I mean, just FYI, I never expected you to reply to my emails out of hours. I just needed to get it off of my own personal to-do list.
You know, those are tools that allows you to schedule emails that they arrive in the morning. Maybe you should learn to using that.
Yeah, but that's the funny part. Because that is something I knew that's going through through the press. Everybody's thinking about exactly in the past you didn't have that, but right now these are actually talking points. The same with business phones. Like, is there, I know that German companies, I think American as well, but I know for German companies, it's sure that they are blocking these. So, for example, like if emails going out after business hour, they will get delivered in the next morning when business hour starting again. They will block the cell phones and stuff like that. Because they now have to protect some people, because that is what I call it slavery with extra straps. It's not that you're staying there with a whip and saying them like, oh, work, but sending out an email to a German employee at 3 in the night. He actually he feels responsible to like, oh, my boss is very urgent. He doesn't understand this concept of, oh, he just wants to get it off his to-do list. I can do this tomorrow. It's more, oh, I have to react on that. At least read it and acknowledge that I read it and then send back, we will talk about that tomorrow.
And if you didn't read it, you had a bad feeling till you talk to the person the next day. Like, that's at least how I always perceived it. That's the beginning. And after some time, I understood that it's like FYI, or it's like it's not urgent or something. Because I think most people that do things like that, as Daniel said, they never expect you to reply at like 3 a.m. or something. But I can, from first-hand experience, can tell you, you do feel responsible as an employee, even if you are not, based on what you learned. Because that's going back to what we said earlier. I got taught, like, when my boss wants something, I gotta deliver.
And I also don't believe that is actually true anymore. I think it's true for a lot of people, but I can, and there I would look at the US again, because normally the US shows us what happens here in some years.
That what is true? The caring, or
no, that they actually, that it's also starting that people like not demanding, but they're expecting this. So it's that you answer. It's not demanding in terms of like answer that, but if you have, for
not
example,
at 3 a.m.
Yeah, I would be like, because they say like, for example, take the startup situation. You hire people, you want these business-wise thinking, you want entrepreneurs, the most upfuck word ever. You want these people in your company, and so you expect, it's a more cloudy expectation from them. It's not like written in like, these are your duties you have to, but think business-wise. So, and then even the boss, like I could not imagine you work for example, like people like Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, and he wrote you an email at 3 o'clock and you didn't answer until 4 o'clock. I think maybe he's not coming to you like you didn't answer, but if you do that 4 times, you say like, you're not really engaged in all of that. We had this great idea. We were talking on the phone with 3 people last night about that. You weren't there. Where were you? Yeah, I was with my kids. Oh, that's sad. So I think this is...
I mean, you might be right, but you're making some really harsh assumptions here right now.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
I'm not sure if he's like that. I know that I had the feeling that Daniel is like that at the beginning. And I think he is to some extent, like, you know, when you guys are recording a podcast at 10 p.m. and I'm busy, you talk not shit about me, but I heard the stream.
Oh, we talk massive shit about you.
I heard the podcast. So you know what I mean? Like, it's not, there is no like real expectation for me to join, but if I don't join, I get a bad feeling because you guys.
Yeah, but you see that, for example,
hopefully jokingly talk shit about me.
But you had exactly that situation with, what is this company? This I think it was a bank. Was it? What is this big bad? Is it Goldman Sachs, or was it? I mean, not completely, because there was this talk about that the young people starting there actually don't have any private life anymore because they're working 13 hours, 40 hours. And no, it was in America. It was not in Germany. Oh. It was an American company, and there was this huge debate going around, and that they also started to talk about that and to protect their people, and they are just burned out and stuff like that. And then they gave them an hour extra, stuff like that. And in that discussion, you heard exactly these positions. Like, yeah, but you're starting here because you get the network, you get the connections, you get the really good education. So that is kind of expected of you to do that. So we don't hire people. Like, that's basically a swear word. Like, and I hear that from every company. We don't need workers 9 to 5. That's basic. So that is, but it's actually what they write into the contract. So you hire them for example, I don't know about American contracts, maybe Daniel can say something about that. In German, it's very common that a normal contract is like 40 work hours a week. So that's written contractually, that's what you get paid for by paper. And then the first speech you hear is like, we don't need 9 to 5 workers here. So like, okay, then you maybe should not hire on that proposal. So I see a danger in that area, that this becomes. That's also a reason why a lot of companies don't want to have time management. Like in the good old days in Germany, when you had like these industrial workspaces, it was totally normal to have your card. You stamp that card. I think that's the same in the US, especially in industry areas. So you came at 9, you stamped your card, you went out at 5, you stamped your card, and everybody could read, okay, he was there, worked his time, he would get paid for that. And if you went on less hours, then you get problems. If you went on too much hours, you get problems, or you get paid or whatever. But you can see that these kind of new tech companies right now, they don't like to do stuff like this. Nobody wants to do that because I think in the US it's not that critical because work law is a little bit different. But in Germany, I think they would get into real trouble if it become public what kind of hours these people work sometimes, and therefore they don't want to have that. So that's also the dark side of that. So I see a lot of positive in that way of working, because it is, but it's also absolutely true, not for everybody. Not everybody wants to do that. And if you are a really corporation, and we start to talk about bigger corporations and not talking about like 30 employees, 40 employees, or 90 employees, maybe even still, where the C-level has still kind of direct contact to all people. Everybody is still a little bit more involved, but think about working for the Telekom in Germany or Siemens or stuff like that. You have like thousands of employees. How you want to do that? And then it's a little bit different. Then you cannot have like 10,000 employees who are all entrepreneurs.
I don't know. I mean, one of the first, let's say, rules that I made when I came in was to really limit the amount of extended hours.
Did you?
And yeah, like when I came in, I did an audit of how many people were, in my opinion, like burning themselves out, basically working weekends and working way too late into the night. And I would always go to people and say, like, go home, just gonna wait till tomorrow, like come back and attack it with a fresh mind, right? And even today there's sometimes still, let's say, like activities that are done on the weekend where I'm like, didn't need to be done on the weekend. I appreciate it, but don't burn yourself out, because when you're looking at the long term, this doesn't help in the long term. It may help in the acute short term, but it doesn't help in the long term. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, it's you can always have some times where you need people to work on a weekend or something if there's something urgent. And I think if you don't expect it from people every day, every week, it's okay with them. I guess I can say from where I'm working right now, we are really small. Everybody is okay with working on the weekend, working at night if there was a need for. But I always tell them, don't work too much. And if they work too much, I'm telling them, don't work too much. I might have learned this from you, Daniel. Not too sure, because I don't remember you doing these audits, because I just remember us two sitting in the office till 3 a.m. But maybe I missed that part of like the audits with the over hours.
What you're not remembering is I would always tell you, go home, and you'd be like, no, I can get this text box out,
Let's not start with text boxes, please. I'm really bad at programming text boxes. No, but what I mean is, like, I think if you have like employees who are really behind your company and also believe in you having a good team, and you're not abusing them and like using them just for work, but you have a good relationship with them, which I think is the only approach of having a good team. You need to like your team. Then they're also okay with assisting you or like the company or whoever with a couple of extra hours on a weekend. And I think that's perfectly fine. But I agree with Daniel, like a lot of over hours is never good. I went through a lot of over hours myself and I didn't like it. In the end, it wasn't good for me. So I learned the lesson there. And I limited
Well,
myself actually. I learned from it.
my philosophy over there, and I would call this American, right? Because I think I fundamentally disagree with what Andy said. I think it's more of a German thing to like overwork your hours, right? Because of this like maybe sycophantic relationship you have with like the quote unquote leaders or managers in a company, right? So I would think the modern American perspective, and maybe coming from, let's say, self-help books, right? Which I notice seems to be a very American thing versus a German thing, right? So the 7 habits of highly effective people, one of the habits is sharpening your saw, right? Because if you have a task where, let's say, short term, let's say, revving up your engines, makes a difference, well, the whole situation was kind of fucked up in the first place, right? Sorry, messed up in the first place, right? So if you're trying to think long term, you want to build out sustainable systems that, can go on without the heroics, right? So I would say the majority of, let's say, in some ways, modern American management thought is to eliminate heroics and turn it into a repeatable system, right?
Yeah, but also repeatable system and it could mean working a lot of times because I found the actual article. I will not read it, but I can read the headline. It was like young investment bankers are complaining about 100-hour weeks.
Yeah, that's the investment
So that
banking
was
industry.
Goldman
They're
Sachs,
insane.
and they said like it's inhuman treatment, and they now demand an 80-hour week. So that's what they demand. So yes, that's Goldman Sachs. It's investment banking. But do you really think that, like, go back to the tech industry and take one of the giants that, if you want to become really important, for example, like Google and stuff like that, it's different for them. There's a reason that Google built this big campus where people basically never have to leave if they
All
work
right,
there.
that is true, but I will caveat that with American companies also pay a lot better. This is one of the things I've noticed when comparing American investment bankers versus European investment bankers. European investment bankers work just as hard as American investment bankers, but they get like 1/4 of the money, right? And I think that it's true in the engineering space too, right? So if you look at starting salaries in the FANG companies, or not even FANG, but like let's say you're a moderately well-funded startup in Silicon Valley or Austin or stuff, the starting salaries are much higher than they are in Germany, right? So yeah, maybe there's let's say, an unsaid social compact between those hours and compensation. But honestly speaking, most of the German companies that I've seen, they they do the slavery with extra steps much more than I would say a modern American company. And maybe and my perspective is obviously quite skewed for like the tech industry, right? So the tech industry, at least in America, but I believe also here in Germany, the workers have a lot of power, right? Because they are an in-demand skill. It's hard to recruit for these positions, right? And so a lot of, let's say, the extra hours are done, let's say, voluntarily, because they know they'll be well compensated for it, right? So at least in terms of American, startups, at least with equity positions, stock options, et cetera, et cetera. It's also around like the ethos of working in a place where you really believe in the mission, et cetera, et cetera. I find much more of the, do it because I tell you to do it, and you need to stay in the office and fill out these TPS reports, much more here than, at least in the tech industry, much more here than I saw in the US.
Oh man, it's now the first time that I wished I could have actually done a little bit of preparation for one episode, because I totally disagree on that point. And but I the only thing I can bring up now is another thing I can bring up is where I have a little bit of knowledge, because I read a lot and was into that debate is, for example, the gaming industry, which is also a very huge industry making a lot of money.
That's true.
And there you have that on a regular base. So this
That's
is
true.
also a huge debate, that you have these, what they call the crunch time in the end of
Yeah, that's
production. So these are normal employees. So we are not talking about getting big stock options, and they basically get whipped over that goal line with these, like, you're not showing up in the credits. If you leave now, you lose all your overwork payment combined, not from this month, but from the whole project, if you leave now and stuff like that. So I would say there is a lot of this also in the US, especially in tech industry. I
I don't
believe
know.
that's everywhere there. And like, now my communist standpoint is coming out again. I believe that's at every position where you don't have unions. And I think the whole tech industry is completely, because also when this started, it was a lot of like, especially startups, if they start up, it's a lot of time that they have shares in the company. So they are basically little bit shareholders or owners. So that's a different point then. But they also, I think the whole tech industry believes they are a little bit better than the rest. So they don't see the need for unions, for example. I know that the situation in the US is also quite different with unions than it is in Germany. But you see that the same thing here, that it's they don't like that. Look at the whole shared economy. That's also basically big US tech companies driving that.
True.
And they hate unions. Like if somebody says like, we want to create a union here, it's like, maybe not. Or another cool story is Walmart. I can just recommend to read this. I think there's even a Netflix documentation about that, or there's some documentation about that, when Walmart went to the German market and wanted to crush the grocery market in Germany, and basically got sent home very quickly. And the result was basically, okay, you don't allow slavery in Germany, okay, then we have to go. That doesn't work. if you want us to pay the employees, that's not going to work with our structure. So there is a lot of problem in that, and it's a lot of like having 3 jobs. That's of course quite different in tech industry, but I think it should be also the time, because these little startups, these little stories about, we were 5 friends doing this in the garage, they ended a very long time ago. So we're talking about, like, if you go to the gaming industry, you're talking about Electronic Arts, Blizzard, and stuff like that. These are huge corporates right now. Look at Facebook,
you
Google.
used to be one of my directs. Did you ever feel pressured into working late hours by me?
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to say. Like I would never say like pressured direct. That's what I mean with extra steps. It's very hard. It's not the old German way. The old German way would be your boss comes to you and says like, this has to be done by tomorrow, and you say like, I can only make this happen if I work the whole night. And it's like, then do this. So that was the really, really old German way. Basically, lock the doors, tell everybody, work until it's finished, and that's not the new way of doing this. The new way is of like, getting this pressure a little bit indirect to you. And that's also the more dangerous way, because it's very much harder to fight against that, because it's not a direct order. If in nowadays structures, a boss would come to you and say like, you work the whole night to do that, you could point like out 5 laws that forbids this to do. Or you could go to a union and say like, he said this, and they would say like, now you go home, we will talk to your boss. Give us a minute. And that this is done. And they learned that. And I wouldn't always say like, you don't need to assume evilness all the time if it's just for, greed or incompetence or stuff like that. It's not always an evil big master plan. It's just evolved into that direction in some areas. I think also in the tech industry it would help a lot. I honestly believe that. I know, and that's maybe a very un-American thing to say, but I believe in if they would establish union structures, it would help them a lot. Also in professionalizing. Because now a lot of success is also made on the back of a lot of workers. It's easier to see that in an industrial environment because it's so easy to see if it's a co-worker and he's working 24 hours and he's coming back and everything is broken and he's like, I'm exhausted, or these typical stories about single moms working 3 jobs in the United States and saying, yeah, of course, she's in Walmart and she's going to Target and she's staying at McDonald's and stuff like that. That's easy to figure out. But I think you have the same situations in the tech industry as well. And also the time is over that everybody is get paid so much. I know some salaries, for example, for these gaming industry, they don't get paid that much. They are basic. They have now the role of a normal worker. They are not the experts anymore. This still exists, so you can still figure out positions where you get a lot of money. But there's also a huge bunch of workers that just get normal payment.
So let's actually personalize this, right? What were the techniques that I used to get you to work harder then?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say that it's more like getting the other one on board in terms of like having some expectations and talking softly about that in terms of like, if we can finish this until then and then, we could show it on this fair, we could show it on this convention, we could talk to these people about that, and then we have another talk and like, if we lost 2 another prospects, if we would be a little bit further here, a little bit further there. So it's not a single point, it's more like getting the other one on board. And I think also maybe there's a big danger in combining the German work attitude with the American approach or this agile approach, because I think they don't mix very well at that point.
So basically you're saying I got you to work harder by talking to you.
Yeah, also, sure.
And then we started the conversation of people thought I wasn't doing any work because I was talking to people.
Yeah, you started enslaving people by talking to them. Yes, that's correct. So you ramped up the whole production value by...
Let me add something to that, because I think you're doing Daniel a little bit wrong here right now. I agree with you. He is enslaving people with talking, but I think he also delivers some value to those people, because I think I'm one of these people that I always was kind of like motivated to push and to, make career and like to just program basically. I actually wasn't thinking too much about career, but I just love to program and I love to be part of a company and build a product. And you don't know how happy I was when something that I built ended up at a customer, even if it was just a small, stupid thing. And that always existed for me. Yeah, you might know about Andy. I'm not sure if you also would know, but it doesn't matter. But when Daniel started to enslave me, I will continue using that term now. He didn't just make me work more hours, but he also got me, as you said, on board, and he got me excited about what we're doing, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, I think. So if I would not be excited about it and I would not personally be invested in whatever we were doing at that time, like I remember we had like some technical issues, we had some structural issues, like what do we like, we had these strange teams, Andy, where you and me basically were doing stuff, and like it's not just about technical thing, it's also like a little bit about the entrepreneurship, as you said, that Daniel got me excited about, which helped me enormously to grow as a person, I would say. Not just as a person, but also like as a career person. Like it helped me to grow in a lot of things, which is a positive thing, but still enslaved.
So totally enslaved, right? And totally. That benefit is totally intangible too. Let me ask you another question. how did your compensation change as I was enslaving you?
I mean, for the first 2 years, not at all. There's a long valley of pain you have to go through till something get compensated. No, like and that's something that I think is that's, in my opinion, is the more American way, because Andy said it already. Like, you, as in Germany, you are expected to do certain things and you do what you do. That's like normal work culture, or was normal work culture. And based on conversations with friends, it is still to some extent. But the American way is like, you like to push people, you like to figure out people that are willing. It's about willing. Like, you can also enslave people that are not willing, but you will figure out after a while that they are not willing to do and that they want to go back to the normal 9-to-5 job, which is not a bad thing. It's just a choice, which sounds really bad if I say this way, but it is really a choice. Like, it's, you get like some, like you get some investment from someone who's pushing you. In my case, it was a lot Daniel's pushing, and it was a hard time. Don't get me wrong. Like, I had a lot of stuff and I had a lot of thoughts about, why am I doing this shit? Like, why am I pushing myself so hard to learn, to like go on strange business trips and meet strange and sometimes nice people? And like, why was I doing that? That was nothing that I had on my career map, but I kind of was excited and I had the opportunity to do it. Like, a lot of people don't ever get this opportunity because they have nobody who pushes them or enslaves them, which was a hard time because, as Daniel asked, there was no compensation for that for a long time. But I trusted in this dude, which was a good thing. Now I know, but I wasn't too sure at this time. And it paid out. Like, I'm really happy with my career, the way I did it. I learned a lot of things, and I learned as well, don't do too many hours. That's a really important lesson you have to learn. But it's also okay if you are motivated into something, if you are really into a topic, if you want to push, you can, like, that's not an issue. Like, you can do that. There's nobody telling you to stop it. But you should listen to yourself to stop if you can't go any further. But that's an okay thing, I think. But if someone is not willing to do that, it might seem like completely enslaving people and abusing people and forcing them to do things that they don't want to do. But if you find someone who's willing, they will jump on board and they will continue to grow. That's my take on it.
Does it take 2 years for your compensation to change?
You asking me now?
Uh-huh.
No, but it also took me 3 years to get unemployed.
But was I faster than you, or I left before you, didn't I?
Yeah, you left before. Yeah. No, and also I think Daniel is doing his voodoo mind tricks again in asking questions. So I think that that's very good for the audience to hear how this works. So because he always sounds so smart when he's going out of that, and his logic is flawless, and it will be flawless until everybody riots. So
I'm just asking questions.
I had some good conversations with Daniel today. Like, I'm not sure if this is like, Daniel, if you told this to me in private and I shouldn't tell anybody, but I will tell anybody. He asked me if I would hire him, and I was like, yeah, I would hire you, and he would work for me. He said that. See, so he's not always the smartest one, and he also admitted that my tech skills are better than his.
Yeah, he's also lying sometimes, so you have to be careful.
I'm okay with if that's being a lie. It's okay. Like, I know it for myself.
Wait, just to set the record clear, I never said your tech skills are better.
Yeah, you did. See, I should have recorded it.
No. Come on, okay. Let's be real here.
No, but all fun aside, this is also one of the reasons. So, like, I think both Fabian and me, that therefore this is not a very representative group here. We both like this way of working, and we choose to do this kind of working. And I think that it's always reasonable for a certain group. But for example, take the company we worked for, were 90 employees at the end, or I don't know how many tech guys would be there. Like, let's take 40 to 50. you cannot do that with all of them, because if everybody of them wants to have a career path that in that direction, something you just have C-level in the end, and that doesn't
But
work.
that's a good thing. I'm very proud of how many of my ex-employees, throughout my career have gone off and did their own startups or landed up in executive positions or have done great things in their life.
Yeah, I'm not denying that. I'm not absolutely not denying that, and I also like that. But you also have to take a look on all the other what is happening to the people who don't want that and say like, no, I am actually a 9 to 5 worker, and I am an employee, and I know. I will not put that on you now, but I know that sometimes you get a little bit frustrated with that attitude if it comes back. That's the big question. Is like, maybe for a startup that's a little bit different, because you more or less handpick people and say like, okay, this is a very different situation. And normally also they would get a little bit of shares, so that makes them a little bit shareholder, and that changes a lot of the whole dynamics. But if you say like, no, I'm coming here, 9 to 5 worker, 40 hours job contract, I just want to do my job. I don't want to get involved in 5 years vision planning, stuff like that. I'm just here to give you my workforce. And the question is for me, and I don't have an answer for that. And it's like, is there room for people like that in 10 years, 20 years? And what happens if everybody becomes entrepreneur? And then we have a big problem, because we have like 5 million companies and nobody is buying shit because nobody earns money. But it's very interesting, and for that, because the time is a little bit, we are very long now. My closing words would be: in the past, I went through both phases of leadership, or both styles of leadership, and I honestly have to say, like these, what Fabian just said, these hope, engagement, this business thinking and getting someone like really hyped up for something. Actually, it's a good way of working, but also it is a much more dangerous way of working than fear. I also experienced the fear way. That's also very common in some German companies, where you just get like fear pressures coming from above, in terms of like, you lose your job if you don't do this and stuff like that. That's also very scary, very burning you out and stuff like that. But it's much more open. And the other way around, hope and engagement is much more dangerous. And you see that a lot of really devastating movements to society, culture, or in German history, also war-wise, they didn't thrive on fear that much, but they thrive a lot on engaging people and saying like, okay, making them believe in a higher goal and stuff like that. That's on some way really, really dangerous. And I don't have an answer for that. I don't know if it's good or bad. I like it, this way of working, and I like that it's coming to Germany as well, but I also don't know how this plays out. And if you look at America, which I do a lot in terms of also work environment, I'm not sure if I want to have that environment that is right now in the US, also here in Germany, completely. I think there's a lot of good things to learn from that, but there's also some things we shouldn't make the same mistakes, I would say, in that area. So we should improve. We should find a new way.
Well, I mean, the original topic was supposed to be a comparison between German and American work environments before it morphed into air your dirty laundry in public about Daniel. But yeah. What about you, Fabian? You have another American boss. Is it the same? Do you feel enslaved?
He's cooler than you.
He is cooler than me. He's definitely cooler than me.
As I told you, like, even if it's a little bit of an enslaved feeling, I mean, if you're willing to be enslaved, that's fine. But that's the thing, as Andy said, I think there need to be room for people that don't want to go that hyped up, motivated, and kind of enslaved way. Because there always will be people like that. That's perfectly fine. Like, you can't expect everybody to have the same motivation, the same drive as you. And I know it's hard, especially for startups, for example, to have someone like that, because in startups, you normally run on a tight budget.
I mean, I'm a pretty normal guy. It's like I go home, I hang out with the family, right? It's not like I'm one of those like investment
And
bankers
then you
or
write
anything.
emails at 3 a.m.
It's-
Now you're not
I
this
can't
bad. You're not this
I
bad.
can't sleep, you know.
I
I
think
mean, before.
maybe just to add that maybe also I think in some American parts this has been done, and in Germany not so much. But maybe we just need to change the way how we pay people, also in terms of that, because that's
True.
what I found out is, like, for example, if you want to do kind of this work environment and you expect that out of your employees, let's say the entrepreneur again, then if you my thinking process would be, if you start to use that word towards your recruiting process, you also should have directly shares on the table.
I agree.
If you do,
100%.
if you don't do that, and it's a lot of things we do, because we take over these words, and like especially that's why I make fun of this word so much, the entrepreneur. It's just like it's so hollow right now. It's just like everybody use that word, and everybody expect that out of somebody else, and but then you get, on the other hand, you get a contract that you sign which says 40 week hours and this is your salary. So like, okay,
Well,
that
I
doesn't
mean,
fit. That doesn't fit.
this serious answer from my side for a moment, right? That's one of the reasons why I find I actually did have a conversation in the past where I also used the metaphor of slavery, right? Because, yeah, there is maybe a toxic hustle culture that exists within the US, right? That stems from its puritanical and Calvinist roots of the foundations of America, right? But there is also, not in every industry, but in a lot of industries, a quid pro quo of, if you are engaged and if you do subscribe to the mission and you are pushing harder, then your extra efforts will be compensated somehow, right? Um, which is why I always, push to compensate people as much as I can, right? One of the things I found in Germany, which I actually found quite offensive, was using that fear and abusing the loyalty of employees to not pay them, right? I was in a lot, or privy to a lot of discussions around compensation around several different German companies where, for example, I was pushing to pay top of band, right? And the pushback was always, but you don't have to pay them that much because they're loyal to the company, right? Which I always found an inherently offensive concept, right? And much more akin to slavery than, I would say you're describing, right? And the second part of that is the lack of employee equity, right? Because I also find it hypocritical for a company to ask for ownership-minded employees without actually giving them a piece of ownership, right? And and the amount of, let's say, entrepreneurial thinking that an employee should have should be pro rata to the actual shares that they have, right? So I'll sum that up, I guess, from my side of, somehow, even though basically Andy was just like slagging me this whole podcast, I agree with him 100% that if you want ownership-minded employees, you need to compensate them, and you need to actually give them ownership.
So I think that wraps it
Any,
up quite good. And maybe in the next topic we could talk about the solution about all of that. It's a democratic-led companies. Very interesting topic.
I'm a huge fan of that. Actually, Europe has a great example of that, which are the co-ops in Spain, like Mondragon, which is an employee-led co-op, right? So all employees are shareholders or partners into the firm. And ironically speaking, a lot of these investment banks that we make fun of, they're also structured in that way because they're structured as partnerships, right? So there is a dual class of like, like associates versus actual partners. But, one of the reasons why investment bankers, at least in the US, work so hard is because, they can have outsized compensation. Do you have any TLDR summarization, Fabian, of what we talked about?
I think you guys summed it up pretty well, and I actually think I did my summary before you guys started with yours. So,
we're totally unstructured with this.
Yeah, but no, but I agree. Like compensation wise, I'm completely with you. You got to pay people what they work. You can't like underpay. I mean, you can, which is what people do in Germany, as you said, but you shouldn't because that's a big, it's offensive if you think about it. Which also goes with a different topic, which you might have covered already. Like you don't talk about money in Germany, which I think is also not a good trait because how should young people know what they are worth with big companies? But it's a completely different topic. So yeah, I think we had a good final word from you earlier, which is not the definition of a final word anymore.
I'm sorry I was such a horrible boss.
That's okay. I forgive you.
Okay, then exactly that is where I jump in. Let's do the closing question. Fabian, would you work for Daniel again?
Yeah, I would.
So me too. So he did something right.
Daniel, would you hire us again?
Yeah, I'd even work for you guys.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
that's another thing. Like, that's, I know it's supposed to be final word, but it's another thing that I found very funny in Germany that like somehow like, let's say managers or executives versus employees, they were like almost two separate species of human beings, right? This is like, in this job, I have a different job or a different role. And in this job, you work for me. That doesn't mean in the next job, I wouldn't work for you, right? Like I'm also just an employee. I'm just a person, right? And I find this like species, like stratification of like job roles in Germany, super interesting as well, right? So like, why wouldn't I work for y'all, right? We're good friends.
Because we
obviously
might
like
do the same thing to you that you did to us. Just saying.
Let's wrap it
increase
up.
my compensation? Yes, please.
Let's wrap it up, Daniel.
Yeah, let's wrap it up with so many love in the room. It's awesome. We finally came to that. Maybe we can continue this, and maybe we invite other guests in the future as well. And we will of course continue doing this on our normal schedule, which is we do it when we want it. So,
you know what, Fabian? You should get your current boss onto this podcast.
Oh.
By the way, Fabian's current boss, right, used to be my boss as well. So it's all an incestuous circle here.
I learn all of the dirty secrets from Daniel from him.
Yeah.
Okay, let's make that happen. Until then, thank everybody for listening. Daniel will inform our fans about this new podcast.
all of our fan.
All of our fans.
Gotta use the right article.
Oh, it's
Not
great.
Article, ending.
So have a good time and see you next time.